is a 2006 Porsche Boxster, and it's the only sports car that has two usable trunks. Today I'm going to tell you about all its good, bad, and weird features, and then I'm going to give it a TFL score of buy it, lease it, rent it, or forget it. Starting with the exterior, I want to talk about the man who designed the 987 Porsche Boxster because it was designed by a guy named Pinky Lai. Now, Pinky also designed two other cars. He designed the 996 911 and the E36 3 Series. In 2005, when Porsche redesigned the Boxster and made this the 987, they actually redid the headlights. So while the original Boxster had these weird kind of egg-shaped headlights, this one has a much more sleek and to some much more attractive modern headlight design. On a 911 turbo, this intake would be, well, just that, an intake. But here on the Boxster, the driver's side does something different from the passenger side. So over here, it's actually a direct feed to the air filter. This side, though, is more of an outlet. So there's actually a fan in here that blows air out of the engine area to help with cooling. Of course, one of the cool things about the Porsche Boxster is that it's a convertible, so I can drop the roof. Check out the size of this exhaust tip. Now here on the non-S model, you get this one giant opening, but when you get the Boxster S, you have a two-port exhaust. The Porsche Boxster is mid-engine, so the engine exists somewhere under here, but frankly, it's quite a process to get access to the engine, and if you take it to a Porsche dealership, they do most of the work from underneath. The engine itself is a 2.7 liter flat six that makes 236 horsepower and 199 pound-feet of torque. Here in the normal Boxster, you get the choice of a 5-speed manual, which Roman has, or a 6-speed automatic. Because it's quite a process to actually get to the engine, Porsche have had to come up with some clever ways to access normal engine bits like the oil and coolant fillers and the battery, but those are all in the trunks, which we'll get to in a little bit. Even the gas cap opens in kind of a funny way. Before we move to the interior, you should take note of this little piece of glass right here. Porsche have made this one manually removable, so you can press these two little buttons right up here, and the piece of glass just pops right out. There's a couple things you'll notice about the interior right away, and the first is actually how nice it is. On the 986 Boxster, the first generation, it wasn't quite the same level of Porsche luxury, but here in the 987, it's all very nice. Now, the other thing you should notice right away is that I fit extremely well in this interior, which for a relatively small car is impressive considering I'm 6'2". This Boxster has Bose audio, and there's these two little holes right between the seats. Now, you might think that that has something to do with the air conditioning, but it's actually two speakers. Porsche have gone about making the Boxster surprisingly practical for a roadster. There's actually a good number of cubbies where you can store things, like for example, this little cubby and this little cubby, and there's one in each door even. Plenty of space. The glove box presents some more interesting quirks. For example, there's these two little buttons you can press that reveal slots for CDs. You can store 2 CDs in your glove box, and right next to that is another funny thing. It's a pen clip. They included a place to put your pen in the glove box. Oh God. Very tight grip. Right above the glove box is another interesting feature. To save space, and I'm sure just to be cool in their engineering design, Porsche have put the cup holders right above the glove box, and what you do is you press these little buttons and the cup holders flip out. Isn't that fun? When you take a look at the gas gauge, the first thing that I noticed, which is kind of a weird Porsche quirk, is that the gas gauge is not measured in full or empty, it's measured in fourths. So a full tank is 4/4 of a tank, half a tank is 2/4 of a tank, and empty is just 0. The Boxster, like any modern car, of course has Porsche stability management, which is effectively traction control, but unlike some modern cars, you can actually turn it all the way off by pressing this little button right here. The Boxster has a small deck lid spoiler out back, but what's cool is that you can actually manually adjust it. So you can press this button and it'll go up. And then you have to press and hold it to make it go down. But what's funny is you can let go at whatever point and it'll just stay there. So you can pick whatever height you want. The interior of the Boxster has two 12-volt outlets. One is right here where the cigarette lighter goes, but the other one is way down there by your passenger's feet. I don't know how many people Porsche thought would be taking their kids along for a ride in the Boxster, but they've certainly accommodated well for that occurrence, because the passenger seat here actually has two little latches for a booster seat, and right next to the dashboard on the passenger door, there's actually a little keyhole, and what that does is it lets you manually disable the airbag if you want. The last thing to take note of here in the interior are the little latches down here by my legs for the front trunk and the rear trunk. What's interesting about these latches is that when you have the top open and then you lock the car, the latches become disabled. So say someone tries to, I don't know, open your trunk or your front trunk while you're out shopping with the roof down, they won't be able to do that. This Boxster, like all Porsches, has a Le Mans style key, which means you just put it in on the left side instead of the right side. Speaking of locking and unlocking your car, let's talk about the Boxster's key, because there's 3 buttons on here, but they're not the normal buttons you would find on a key fob. Now there's one to open the front trunk, one to open the rear trunk, and then one that's just the shape of a key. Now that key button is both the unlock and lock button. You just press it and it locks, and then you press it again and it unlocks. Using said key, I will open up the rear trunk, which reveals, well, a space big enough for a small suitcase, but also these 2 little nozzles right here. Now the first is where you fill your oil. I mentioned earlier that Porsche had to cleverly find places to put these sort of things, and this is where they put 2 of them at least. You got the oil filler and your coolant filler right here, and check this out. There's actually a little window where you can see how much coolant you have. Opening the front trunk reveals actually a little handle that you have to use, but then it reveals a very open space that has access to a couple things. You have this little cubby to get access to your DVD and CD player. You have this little bit to access your brake fluid, and then you have this little compartment which has 2 little screws that you undo, and then it pops up and reveals your battery. In summary, the Porsche Boxster is practical and it's actually quite inexpensive, especially compared to modern Porsches. So I'm going to give it a rating of buy it, because, well, you can actually go buy this exact Porsche on Craigslist right now. We're selling it and we're asking about $17,000. We'll drop a link to the ad in the description below, and if you're interested, give us a call. For the Fast Lane Car, I'm Mike Curtis, and please be sure to come back to TFLcar.com for more news, views, and real-world reviews, and of course, more good, bad, weird videos just like this one. Thanks.